Good evening and welcome. How's everybody doing? It's Obi-Wan Pez for N Simplex Pachinko. Sorry, I was poking around on the other thing. I hope y'all are having a good start to your week. We're doing all sorts of stuff around here. In April, we will be moving house, so just putting that on everyone's radar. Might end up being a bit flustered. Good news, I might have, I suppose, more time for like compiling videos and actually putting them on YouTube rather than spending all of my time making them and then not doing anything. We'll see how it goes. So, anyway, we are going to be here for the next, give or take, 2 months. So we'll continue to make our video content as well as posting things to YouTube when I can get to them at Obi-Wan Pez and at nsimplexpachinko6542. Head on over there if you want to see my gaming content. That's at Obi-Wan Pez, and math content at nsimplexpachinko. And those of you who are on YouTube already, if you would like, you can come over to Twitch and spend some time with the community over here. We have some awesome other creators, including Slim from the Academy of Useless Ideas, Dr. Gold from Actual Education, Don Factorial, E.N. Stuckey, Zach from Eat of the Two-Eye Pie, who's just here, Mary with a Remark, Penn Center, Phobos Dream, Physics and Depression, Talos Teaches, and the Tutor Wizard. And then we also have some friends who are, and also Math Pond. This is Matt. Need to add Matt to the list as well. Gotta write that down somewhere so I don't forget. In addition, we also have some study buddies who hang out, learn some cool stuff, and want to share their enthusiasm with you. So if anybody is interested in learning particular subjects, go see Rendeo, Math Spellbook, FizzBuzz, Suna Ao, and Walking Stick Library. For tonight, we were going to look at Galilei and Huygens, Music and Science. Posted just before the end of the year, December 29th, and looking at some of the math history, as well as tying that into some of the science that they were able to come up with. I don't think we did anything here. Yeah, okay. Certainly we didn't go over much of this. Might have touched the introduction a bit. If anyone is also interested, An Opinionated History of Mathematics was a podcast that ran up until, I want to say, like 2023, and he had a few views about Galilei in particular. Mostly that he didn't really know what he was doing, and mostly was there for the fame of it, which, ouch. But the dude did his homework, so it seems like he at least has a valid opinion, even if it is perhaps controversial among people who do science. So I don't know. We'll see. Okay. Athanase Papadopoulos is the author of this particular paper. Tachyon for Emperor. Hey, it's going pretty well here. How about you? Yeah. Now, I will say, it is just a guy in a microphone. It doesn't even involve like music in the background at all, anything at all. So, if you just need something that's like, 30, 40 minutes that you can put like in the middle of your playlist so that you're not going to be like, oh god, this again. It is sometimes nice for it to just pop up, play for 30 or 40 minutes while I'm mostly listening to it, and then I can go back later and check out other cool stuff. Like I said, it doesn't have anything in terms of like musical production value, anything like that. It's certainly nowhere near like Radiolab, which has like all the little sound effects throughout and stuff like that. Surprise podcast, yeah. Like, I will say a lot of my podcasts do not have music throughout. It's like, a little bit at the beginning, a little bit at the end, pretty much. So, Star Talk and Astronomy Cast and all these other ones are just like pretty much straight talking for 30 minutes. I have to break them up occasionally. Or at least rotate subjects. All right. Vincenzo Galilei and Constantine Huygens were both humanists and eminent musicians, the former from the late Renaissance and the latter from the early modern era. Their respective sons, Galileo and Christian, were scientists whose importance cannot be overestimated. My aim in this chapter is to set the scene for a parallel presentation of the legacy of the Galilei on one hand and the Huygens on the other. This will give us an opportunity to talk about mathematics, music and acoustics, but also about science in general at this time of birth of the modern era. The last version of this paper will appear in the book Vincenzo Galilei, The Renaissance Between Music and Science. Edited, I believe, Natasha Fabri and Ferdinando Abri, Leo Olszki, Editore Firenze. All right. Vincenzo Galilei, 1520 to 1591, occupies a special place in the history of Western thought for his work and his relationship with his contemporaries, and in particular for the education he provided and the impetus that he gave to his son, Galileo Galilei, 1564 to 1642, the founder of modern physics. In this chapter, I would like to broaden the perspective on Vincenzo Galilei and at the same time focus on certain scientific and cultural facts that allow us to draw a parallel between, on the one hand, the legacies of Vincenzo Galilei and that of his son Galileo, and on the other, those of Constantine Huygens and his son Christian. 1596 to 1687 and 1629 to 1695. Addressing the legacy of the Galilei and the Huygens will also give us the opportunity to talk about science and music in general. Always a fun thing. Citation needed. Vincenzo Galilei and Constantine Huygens were excellent musicians, both playing the lute and the keyboard. They were also prolific composers. Huygens' music is still performed today. Vincenzo Galilei was not only an excellent lute player, but also used his instrument to conduct experiments on musical intervals, which supported the theoretical questions he addressed on octave division and the perception of consonance and dissonance. Their respective children, Galileo and Christian, developed each in his own way his father's ideas on music. Some authors have rightly insisted on the fact that the young Galileo witnessed his father's experiments on this instrument and helped him with his mathematical knowledge. Stillman Drake, Music and Philosophy in Early Modern Science. Coelho, V. Coelho, editor, Music and Science in the Age of Galileo, Dordrecht and Kluwe, 1992. We shall also review some of their scientific achievements in this period of the nascent modern era, presenting these contributions in parallel. Mathematics, physics, and astronomy are the main fields of science that underwent considerable development in the 16th and 17th centuries. There is also a field intimately linked to music, that of acoustics, a theoretical and experimental science that studies sound, its formation and propagation, instruments, musical intervals, and several related subjects. Vincenzo Galilei and Constantin Huygens were both involved in this science. Their children, Galileo and Christian, were also engaged in the science of sound, as were other prominent scientists of their time, such as Johannes Kepler, 1571-1630, René Descartes, 1596-1650, Marin Mersenne, 1588-1648, John Wallis, 1616-1703, Isaac Newton, 1643-1727, and others. Let me add to this list Blaise Pascal, 1623 to... Whoops. 1682? Question mark. 1662. Well, they made it to 39. Wow. The religious mystic and mathematician who is the contemporary of Christian Huygens, one of the main characters of the present chapter. Pascal's first book was on the theory of sound, Traité des Sons, which he wrote at age 11. It is worth noting that the great figures of that epoch who contributed to the study of sound are, broadly speaking, the same as those who made the great mathematical and physical discoveries. In particular, Descartes is regarded as the father of analytical geometry, Newton as one of the two founders of differential calculus, the other being Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, absolutely, 1646 to 1716, who incidentally also took a close interest in the theory of sound, and also the sole inventor of integral calculus. Mersenne made substantial contributions to number theory, specifically the Mersenne primes, which are of the form 2 to the p, some prime number, minus 1. Not every of those numbers, but many of those numbers. Or wait, maybe I'm thinking backwards. I think it's every 2 to the prime minus 1, but... yeah, but it certainly doesn't cover all of the primes. I think that's right. Somebody can correct me. Mersenne, right. In the sections that follow, we shall mention some of Galileo Galilei's and Christian Huygens' works on acoustics, and thus touch on the field of music, the favorite activity of their parents. Vincenzo Galilei was born in a family of merchants that belonged to the minor Florentine nobility. He grew up in Santa Maria a Monte, a commune in the province of Pisa. He married Giulia Venturi degli Amanati, who came from a prosperous and cultured background. Vincenzo played the lute, taught music, and composed madrigals. He wrote books on theoretical music. He formed his own ideas about singing in general, preferring melodic singing and advocating a sung recitatif in the style of ancient Greek theater, although little was known about the latter. This style gave rise was to give rise a few decades later to Italian opera. Interesting that he was like, I guess, technically one of, not necessarily the father of Italian opera. Like most musicians of his time, Vincenzo Galilei was, in the pure Greek tradition, interested in the mathematical side of the music. He was a member of the Camerata Academy founded by Giovanni de Bardi. Is that where we get Bard from? 1534 to 1612. Count of Vernio, a Florentine nobleman, writer, composer, art critic, and intimate of the Medici. Bardi was about 24 years Galilei's junior, and took him under his protection. Bardi took Galilei under his protection? Feels like that should be the other way around. Of particular note among Galilei's treatises is his Dialogo della musica antica et moderna, Florence Marescotti, 1581, translated Claude Parisca, Dialogue on Ancient and Modern Music, Humanism in Renaissance Musical Thought, New Haven, Yale University Press, 1985. He is credited with being the first to observe that to obtain an octave of a note emitted by stretching a string, the tension of the string must be multiplied by 4 and not by 2, contradicting the Pythagorean creed that the ratio of integers 1 to 2 is universally associated with the octave. So, the length of the string, if you end up, if you want the octave from 2 different places on the same string, then the ratio of 1 to 2 is correct. However, if you want to increase an octave, this is saying that in order to increase by an octave by just stretching the string, now you're going to need to multiply it by a factor of 4. That's going to put a lot of tension on the particular strings, and yeah, probably don't do that too much because you'll break strings really easily. When I was about 6, I was trying to tune my violin, and I was like, what happens if you just make it tighter? And it kept going up, and it kept going up, and it kept going up, and then ping! Finally it broke. So I had to get a new... Age 6, I had to get a new G string. Ayo. You could say you hate it here, it's fine. Vincenzo Galilei describes such an experiment in Discorso intorno alla diversità delle forme del diapason, written around 1589, a treatise in which he examines the different ways of producing the octave, called in ancient Greek terminology the diapason, hence the title of the book. Translation Paliska, special discourse concerning the diversity of the ratios of the diapason. Florentine Camerata, Yale University Press, 1988. His experiment consisted in attaching a system of weights to one end of a vibrating string and observing that in order to obtain the octave while keeping the length constant, the weights must be quadrupled, not doubled. Similarly, to obtain the fifth, one must multiply the weights by 4/9, not 2/3. Vincenzo Galilei's discovery is a consequence of the general law of string vibration stated by Mersenne a few decades later, which says that the frequency of vibrations produced by a stretched string is inversely proportional to the square of the tension and not to the tension itself. Mersenne's law is sometimes considered to be the first known nonlinear law of physics. We shall mention Mersenne several times in the sequel. Vincenzo Galilei conducted his own experiments. In this context, as in others, he taught his son Galileo the importance of experimentation and not of relying blindly on established theories, no matter how old they may be. Good job. Oh no. All right, we are going to send a quick note to the author, page 3, if possible. Maybe not. Thank you for the follow. Good evening and welcome. If you haven't been here before, my name's Obi-Wan Pez. This is N-Simplex Pachinko. We do mathy type stuff on Mondays and Wednesdays, and lately it has been math communication on Monday and math calculation on Wednesday. We have been working on Wednesday, cracking the GRE. So it is a GRE Graduate Record Exam Help book. Yeah, it's over there. We're currently breaking into our Calculus 3 section. So I guess we're finishing up Calc 2 this Wednesday. So we'll see how it goes. That's just the same thing, right? Yeah, okay. Never mind. Forward one. Okay, well, we will try and find this author's stuff so we can just note real quick. Oh, goodness. Dr. WD40, thank you so much for the raid. Good evening and welcome, everybody. Awesome. My name is Obi-Wan Pez. This is N-Simplex Pachinko. We do mathy type stuff here on Mondays and Wednesdays, gamey type stuff on Tuesdays and Fridays lately. We've been doing, I know, right? They're trying to make you earn that mod badge. We've been doing math communication on Mondays and GRE help on Wednesdays. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming in. This is amazing. At a loss for words here. But yes, Dr. WD40, what were you up to? Your name suggests some sort of experiments. Or a love of industrial lubricants. Or, ¿por qué no los dos? Well, hello, Sean Kelly, Pacific Plankton, Phyrexians, David Alexander. Good evening to all of you and everybody else who came in. So glad to see you. Love from TKF, awesome. We are reading about, we are reading about Vincenzo Galilei and his influence that he had on his son, Galileo. So, and also Konstantin Huygens and his experience, his influence on his son, Christian Huygens. So we try to read up on a whole bunch of stuff. 666 days from Mars to orbit the sun every year? Oh. Almost. So close, but not quite. I've got 686.98. So 687 most years. It would be a fun fact. From the point of view of the Earth. Okay, so you're saying the sidereal Mars year? Ugh. To end up in the same place in our sky. Okay. And I do love that animation of the spiraling solar system plowing through space with the sun. If only it were a little more accurate. It is fun, though. Okay, so through his experiments, we get a glimpse of Galilei's technician side, a technician in the original sense of the Greek word techne, meaning both art and craft. The following statement, extracted from the same treatise, Discorso, listed above, has been considered as an indication of Galilei's adherence to the, quote, experimental method that was to take over science a few decades later. There are few things that cannot be weighed, counted, or measured. Galilei's experiments led him to distrust dogmas, or at least not to blindly accept them, even those of well-established authorities, as he wrote in Dialogo della musica antica et della moderna. In connection with the theories of Pythagoras, I wish to point out two false opinions of which men have been persuaded by various writings, and which I myself shared until I ascertained the truth by means of experiment, the teacher of all things. Talking about Pythagoras, it's worth recalling here that they admitted only rational numbers, ratios of integral numbers. Also, here is the arXiv DOI link for anybody who wants that. Not DOI, sorry. The arXiv link. Sorry. I'm so used to using DOI just as like the, permanent link that's always going to be there. But that's actually doi.org, I believe. So. In their musical theories, which rules out all considerations of tempered scales, since those involve taking nth roots of integers, which are generally irrational. And that's also very much true for the piano. So in order to tune a piano from one key to the next, you need to work with roots, the eighth roots of integers, in order to get each white key to be exactly 1/8 of a octave apart from the previous one. Same posture of Vincenzo Galilei towards science appears in the following passage extracted from Discorso in Domo, Arusso delle Dissonanze. Before your lordship begins to untie the knot of the proposed questions concerning the nature of diatonic practice today, I wish in those things which sensation can reach that authority always be set aside, as Aristotle says in the 8th book of Physics, and with it the tainted reason that contradicts any sense perception at all of truth. For it seems to me that those who, for the sake of proving some conclusion of theirs, want us to believe them purely on the basis of authority without adducing any further arguments are doing something ridiculous, not to say, with the philosopher, acting like silly fools. That is, with Aristotle. Okay. As for Vincenzo's son Galileo, there's no need to recall how he stood up against dogma. Yeah. We know he paid for it with his freedom, having been confined to house arrest for the rest of his life. Although the church mostly is arguing the fact that he was fighting the church and had lost his political favor more than they disliked the science of it. Again, to pass you off to a good a guy who actually does his homework on this very carefully. What is it? Opinionated History of Mathematics. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Yes. Opinionated History of Mathematics. Ooh. Oh no, I already did that one. Yep, here we go. Boy. Come on now. Sorry, I had his name, like, right here. Really? Creator says intellectual mathematics, but that's not his actual name. Come on now. Alternatively, he was on Blue Sky pretty recently. So I should be able to... Opinionated History of Mayhem Addicts. Nice. I definitely spelled that wrong. There we go. Victor Blasio. Utrecht University and intellectualmathematics.com. So Jupiter like a leopard, spotted like a leopard, passes between Ursa Major the bear and Leo the lion. I shall now turn to the two Huygens, and I would like to start with 3 quotations, one from the father, 2 from the son, which illustrate the fact that both were, like Vincenzo and Galileo Galilei, wary of the indiscriminate use of rules. The first quotation is extracted from a letter from Constantine to Henry Dumont, dated 10th of October 1658. He writes, I am not unfamiliar with the rules, but I find only little consistency and many contradictions between the authors. Similarly, his son Christian wrote the following sentence in the margin of his manuscript, They always love doing that, don't they? Cycle harmonique par la division de l'octave en 31 dièse. Intervalle égaux. Complete works are to Christian Huygens, Société Hollandaise des Sciences, le I. Okay, harmonic cycles by the division of the octave in 31 dièse. Tenths, I guess? with equal intervals. Œuvre complète, non audio qui elegant authoritatem. I do not listen to those who, to impose themselves, appeal to authority. Oh, right. Allegiance to authority. Yep. The authority to which Huygens refers in this marginal note is Marin Mersenne. And 11. Portefeuille Musica, œuvre complète. French translation, Renzo Cadeo, Xavier Hacher, Frank Jedrzejewski. Hey, Athanas Papadopoulos. Christian Huygens écrit sur la musique et le son. Œuvre traduite du latin avec commentaires mathématiques, historiques, musicaux. Hermann Kohl. Théorie de la musique Prix. The rest of this chapter we refer to this volume as Écrit sur la musique. Thank goodness. In the same vein, let me quote the same following sentence by the same Huygens, reprinted in 23rd of his Œuvre complète. Doubt is painful to the mind. This is why everyone willingly agrees with those who claim to have found certainty. I hate it. Now we turn in some detail to the second musician we were particularly interested in this chapter, Constantijn Huygens, who belonged to the Dutch aristocracy. We learn from biographers that his childhood he was taught to read and write several languages together with mathematics and philosophy. This was not unusual for the education of gifted highborn boys. In addition, he received a consequent musical education, first from his father and then with famous teachers. He became a fine player of lute, viola da gamba, theorbo, spinet, and organ. In his autobiography, he writes, "I've always dedicated myself with constant diligence to the most important part of the music, the polyphony. I even dare to say I have come close to the Italians, whom one can take as a model." Huygens became a diplomat by profession, evolving among noblemen, ambassadors, and ministers. In 1625, he became secretary to Frederick Henri of Nassau, Prince of Orange, who at the time was an ally of France. He remained loyal to this princely family throughout his life, representing it in Paris and Versailles on numerous diplomatic missions that also took him to England and other European countries. Besides playing several instruments, he was a composer and musical theorist. The editors of Constantijn Huygens' correspondence and musical works report that he placed music above everything else and that he never traveled without his lute. That's impressive. I mean, it's not like huge or anything. It's probably about that big, but like that would be kind of annoying. Wait, lute. Lute. Yes, lute. Thief of the telescope from Egyptians and Greeks. I mean, yes. He just had a good salesperson. And I believe the other issue is that, you know, the telescopes that he found and the telescope that was sold to him were kind of crap. Like, they were better than nothing, but they were not good. And so, like, Edison after him, right? He, like, took the thing and made it supremely better, which still was not particularly good. No. I'm not saying it's not a telescope. I'm saying that if there were plenty of telescopes around at the time that he had them, like, clearly he made some sort of improvement to it. Otherwise, he would just be like, yeah, I mean, he introduced it to this city, but that's it. He wasn't the inventor. So many people credit him with inventing it. Clearly not. He just refined it and made it a much better tool. Which, again, he saw the moons of Jupiter, but not very well. Right? I mean, my goodness, what did I have? 30x? Basically put Jupiter and the moons inside of the circle of, you know, the vision that the viewport that I had, but Jupiter was like the size of my finger inside of the whole viewfinder here, right? Like, it was maybe 1/10 of the radius. If I use the 900x, 900, I think, then, you know, I could get a pretty close picture, but I'd have to keep winding it because it was a manual. It would basically, like, I couldn't take my eye off of the viewfinder except to, like, set it up at the right angle and then just have to turn one thing to get it back in the viewfinder. Which almost never worked. It was always like a two-hand operation because I didn't know how to use it properly. Constantine Huygens was also a prolific poet, writing in Latin, Flemish, Italian, English, German, and French. Translated books written in all of these languages, as well as others. He used to say that translating was his way of perfecting his language skills. Yikes. Yeah, that was what I thought, too. His voluminous correspondence is written almost entirely in French. His poems and musical compositions remain a significant part of the Dutch cultural heritage. The editors of Constantine Huygens' correspondence and musical works estimate the number of his musical compositions at over 800. English translations of Constantine Huygens' poems are available in print, and there are also several recordings of his compositions, obviously not by him, but written by him. 15 is musical compositions. 26 of the preface by Jean Bloet, footnote 14. Right, that one. And selection of poems by Sir Constantine Huygens in Amsterdam studies the Dutch Golden Age. Nice. Constantine Huygens was also a Latinist with a keen interest in philosophy and mathematics. Condorcet, at the beginning of his Eloge of Constantine's son Christian, speaking of his father, writes, Marie-Jean Antoinette Nicolas de Carita de Condorcet, Eloge d'Huygens, Œuvre et Condorcet, publié par Condorcet O'Connor, 1847. Cool. In those times when the reborn Enlightenment aroused even more gratitude than envy, it was not considered that a taste for letters and philosophy was in a magistrate a useless or dangerous distraction. Huygens was close to René Descartes, who had gone into exile in Holland to avoid censorship, and he defended Descartes when the latter was accused of impiety. Condorcet, in the same eloge, writes, "We will not praise Constantin Huygens for having dared to cultivate Latin poetry and to study the physics and geometry of Descartes, but we will praise him for having had, although a man of position, the courage to be publicly the friend of this philosopher, falsely accused of impiety and persecuted by a dangerous enemy." Huygens and Descartes maintained a lively correspondence discussing mathematics, dioptrics, mechanical arts, and lenses. The two men shared ideas on matter, gravity, the causes of motion, and many other topics. As friends, they also discussed their daily preoccupations and talked about the people they met. Volume 3, Descartes' Oeuvre, June 1643. Descartes visited Huygens regularly. He was impressed by the talents of the friend of his son, Christian. No. His friend's son, Christian, whose inventiveness and passion for mathematics were evident from an early age. Thank you so much for the follow. Good evening and welcome. Hope you're having a good evening. My name's Obi-Wan Pez. This is N Simplex Pachinko. If you're here from a raid, awesome. If you just stumbled onto the stream, awesome. Hey Harold, how are you? If anyone is interested, there are other math people as well here on the platform. We had Zach from E to the 2i Pi on here a little bit earlier. I'm sure he's around. Slim from Academy of Useless Ideas, Dr. Gold from Actual Education, Don Factorial, Ian Stuckey, Merriweather Remark, Penn Center, PhoboStream, Physics and Depression, Talos Teaches, and the Tutor Wizard are all, and Math Pond are also math streamers. So if you want to go check them out, that'd be really awesome. Give them a follow, hang out, ask some questions if you're interested. And speaking of which, if you are interested in asking any particular questions, you want to know what's going on with the state of mathematics education, what do I think of a particular teaching style or philosophy or what have you, I don't necessarily know all of it, but I was a 15-year journeyman, I suppose, teacher of mathematics at a community college in Maryland in the United States. So I have opinions, but I also have some knowledge. Generally speaking, I am pretty good at differential equations and anything underneath. Dolciani et al. Did I ever? Specifically modern algebra? Oh, goodness. That looks older than my parents. Solving problems with open sentences. Axioms, equations, and problem solving. Wow. Yeah, this looks like my Algebra 1 textbook from high school. What's the best reading curricula for a math geek? If you are interested in mathematical methods, then I'm going to suggest Peter Liljedahl, who wrote a... I don't have the orange book, which is the basis for his philosophy. However, I have the supplement book here. Building Thinking Classrooms by Peter Liljedahl. It's orange, and I don't recommend purchasing it unless you're actually a teacher, or if you have or if you have a friend who might be interested in learning new methods of teaching math. So, my name, I have two, right? I introduce myself as Obi-Wan Pez. Because I'm mean. So, one of my friends was walking through a store and, like, kind of, in comic books, they have that. Yep. They have that moment where somebody's walking along and then they just kind of go, huh, and there's like an asterisk above their head. Yeah, she had one of those moments, and she turned, and like there was an entire end cap of my face staring back at her, and she was just like, that's weird. So she had to buy one and then give it to me. And that's about 2015, 2016 when I created my username. Paul Zeitz, Art and Craft of Problem Solving. No. Could be interesting. Okay. Well, let's see. Under math, let's do add new folder and textbooks to review. Art and craft of problem solving. All right. The good news is that it is on Internet Archive. We will pop that into limited preview. Fine. Suppose he wants actual money. $2007. Yeah, okay. It's a little new. Okay. Ought to be interesting anyway. Well, thank you for calling my attention to it. Yeah, the other joke about the best candy dispenser lookalike is that our other friend Don Factorial has under one of his tags is Ed Sheeran stunt double, which he's not wrong. Constantine kept his friend informed of his son's progress. Descartes kept a close eye on young Christian's development. 2 A's. He also appreciated his interest in music theory, a subject that had occupied him personally since his youth, and which he continued to cultivate throughout his epistolary exchanges. Case in point, letter to Constantine Huygens in 1646, in which Descartes, after informing the latter of a correspondence he had exchanged with his composer and music theorist John Abel Ben, wrote to him about his son Christian, who was 17 at the time. If your second son wishes to practice in this matter, music, he may have the opportunity to do so by correcting Banios and myself, and showing that neither of us has understood anything about it. For our reasons, being neither mathematical nor physical, but only moral, as I said there, it is easy to find others that are contrary to them. If he writes anything on the subject, I shall be very glad to see it. Marin Mersenne also regularly corresponded with Constantin Huygens, called him the father of or patron of music. Correspondence between the two men, later between Mersenne and Christian Huygens, includes many questions related to Galileo Galilei's work, as well as we shall recall later in this chapter. The Minim was well acquainted with the writings of the two Galileis, and his correspondence he acted as a link between them and the Huygens. As a matter of fact, Mersenne published a free translation of the commentary on Galileo's Discorsi e Dimostrazione Mathematiche intorno a due nuove scienze attenenti alla meccanica e I movimenti locali, which he commented extensively on the latter's experiments on sound. In his correspondence with Constantin and Christian Huygens, Mersenne addressed several times the question of falling bodies and other questions that Galileo Galilei had dealt with at length. We shall discuss these in the sequel. Among many subjects covered in the correspondence between Mersenne and his friend Constantin Huygens is, of course, music. Their exchange on this subject included both technical and practical matters. The two men used to share their opinions on musicians, instruments, music teachers of their time, etc., and how to improve music in all aspects. In a letter dated 12th of January 1647, Mersenne discussed with Constantin Huygens the question of harmonic tones, without, however, using the word harmonic, explaining that this phenomenon constituted the greatest difficulty he had ever encountered in music. What and when and why the voice which is among the lowest that one can take, or several voices taken higher, make besides their own tone, overtones, yes, another tone which is above at the 12th or double fifth. This also happens to the thick strings of a touched viol. If you stand at great silence in your cabinet, with the great attention you touch the viol string, gently or faintly, you will always hear a sound making an echo accompanying the natural one at a 12th above, and often another one at the 17th. Yeah, certainly, since you can rightly be called the father or patron of music, this difficulty deserves that you should not leave it to the world, and that you yourself, it should be demonstrated by anyone else other than you in a manner so clear that anyone can see the reason for it. Okay, ads are about to start. Thank you everybody for coming in, and we will be back in 3 minutes. I'm going to go grab a snack, put my tea stuff back downstairs, so see you in just a couple. I am not getting over the flu. I just cough all the time. It's quite terrible. I have had that since I was 12. But thank you very much. Shall return. Right on. So, welcome back. We're going to do a quick little fitness break. This is going to be Tai Chi, which is one of the 3 martial arts that I've studied. I say that. It's I have studied it for about a year. So, quick little warm up if everybody else wants to follow along. You can get yourself a nice little space. It's not going to take much. So what we do is we kind of do like regular trunk rotations. Have your feet about shoulder width apart, but instead of just rotating at the hips and that is it, what we're going to do is actually tuck into what's called the inguinal crease. It's that little crease that's between your thighs and abdomen, so right in here at the groin. And what you do is you tuck into it, and then as we come out of it, you give it a little push with the appropriate leg on that side, and it gets you a little extra boost of power. So what we do, a lot of times people think this is where the chi is kind of either sat or developed. But anybody who isn't particularly spiritual in terms of their like martial arts knows that this is a great biomechanical mechanism. So basically we're going to do this trunk rotation and then tuck into the inguinal crease and then kind of snap out of it and then let the arms kind of go as we do this. So basically no real power being put into the arms to like make them stay in motion or anything like that. I'm just basically making sure they don't smack into anything, including myself, although sometimes you can also... My instructor does this, and he says it's good conditioning. I tend not to do it too much. Right. The purpose of this really is to get your muscles warmed up a bit and to get your joints moving a bit and get the synovial fluid in the joints as well as your blood kind of pumping a little bit. It's not going to do like a huge amount in terms of like, cardio. But it does set up the ability for your body to do cardio pretty well. Right, and then we come down the front. So use your knees to let your arms gain height, I suppose. So yeah, I started taking Eskrima with this particular instructor about pretty close to 2 years ago. My family moved to the UK in April of 2024, and I was looking up martial arts classes, and there was like a studio, shopping center type studio somewhere out in the other end of town. I was like, maybe. And that was like Taekwondo. And I was like, I don't know. So then I found somebody, I like typed in Jeet Kune Do and who's it's? The one they come from. Wing Chun. And the closest I could find was like Leeds. I'm like, I'm not going that far. And then I remembered that one of my friends had done Eskrima, and so I looked for it, and sure enough, somebody did Eskrima, and that was this particular instructor. So we did Eskrima for about a year. That's the Filipino stick martial art, which realistically is you working with machetes, but you don't use machetes because, inexperienced people and machetes, very bad combination. So we were doing stuff with small bamboo sticks. And in some cases, not so small bamboo sticks. These are actually ironwood, and they weigh 500 grams each. They are rather heavy, and I try not to train with them unless I've like done a lot of warm-up, because they tend to pull a lot. Oh, oh, that's gonna wake up my kid. I bet you she's gonna knock at the door and be like, "What are you doing?" Trying to sleep. Right, back to warm-up. So you can also do this sort of alpine skiing type thing. Throw arms a little bit. Dip with the hip and make them come up. Again, just guiding the arms where they're going, not like making them go anywhere in particular. And then we also do 1 foot forward and throw weight back and forth. Make them go like this. We're going to stop this pretty quick in a second here. Don't worry. We'll get there. So yeah, we were doing Eskrima for about a year, and then it was just like 3 of us. And so he was like, "Look, guys, I can't do this. Like, some of you are also reaching close to the edge of my abilities to actually be able to teach you, but also like it wasn't his primary art." So he's like, I know a lot, but and he was like, "Tell you what, you could do Tai Chi if you want." And I was like, "Yes, please." It's not actually what I signed up for, but I like him as an instructor, so we'll go with that. Okay, so the form for Tai Chi, I know approximately 1/3 of it. And it starts feet together in sort of a V formation. We pick up your body as if it's being like your whole spine is being pulled up by a string, and then kind of keep the hands out in this bear formation. We tuck into the right inguinal crease, step out, and then straighten our right foot. Cool. I never know if my feet are straight. And then we breathe in for 2 and out for 2. Tuck left, and then create this little energy ball, which we bring to the other side. It's not really an energy ball, but we shift our weight out, step forward, and then we're going to do a ward off left, straighten the back foot to a 45-degree angle, and the right hand just kind of floats down here. All right, then we tuck a little bit to the left. Right, tuck a little bit to the left, turn on the ball of the foot, and then step right, do a right ward off this way, and turn the back foot again. And then as we come back with our weight, we do what's called a rollback, and then a press, separate and push, and then everything kind of settles back into this position, and then we use the heel of our right foot to twist, and we do not change the orientation of our front foot. It is now in a very awkward, like pigeon-toed sort of thing. So basically, we want to release that tension. So we come off to the right like this, tuck even further. Left hand comes under, right hand goes over in a sort of like beak position. And then we lift the heel of the left foot at the same time turning. And this does what's called a single whip. So this whips out like this. You're going to be using the your wrist to actually strike at whatever target you have. Step left, bring the arm out. Then we twist the hand, the back foot, and shift all of our weight forward at the same time. Then we come down and bring up back again in lift hands. So here, left hand is about where the right elbow is. Right hand's about where my head is. I have basically no weight on my front foot at all, except just touching with the heel, and all of my weight is on my back leg. This is a really great pose to just hold if you want to build up your muscles. Everything comes back down like this, and then we step forward into a shoulder strike. So this ends up connecting here, or potentially you come out with an elbow, or you do another single whip. There's many different ways to actually hit your target. Then we do what's called white crane, or white crane sunning its wings. So leaning almost all of our weight on the front leg, we're going to twist the back leg and tuck into the inguinal crease on the right, and then we're going to do the crane. So left hand is down, right hand is up, both are pointing outward. And again, here we're like all on the back foot, almost nothing on the front, this time the toes. Then I need more room. Okay, then from here, oh no. Please tell me I did not forget. Okay, nope, I'm good. We do a kind of block that comes across the body. So we're starting here. The right hand comes across to block something. The left hand comes across to block something. And then as the right hand comes up around the head, we use our body weight to bring both a strike forward and a block downward at the same time. Let's go like that. This we stand up, heel to heel, do what's called strumming the lute, which is basically the same as lift hands, but now we're on the opposite side. There might be something different about it, but apart from what hand is out. Then we do the exact same thing again. So we do a right, left, bring it up, come through like that. And then these are the new moves that I may not remember. Let's see. We're going to lean back. Is it lean back? I mean, we have to lean back because I need to move my foot. So I think we're leaning back. We come 45 degrees on the front heel and bring the hand down into a fist. And then we step forward, and what's going to happen is this foot comes down. We're going to step completely sideways, as if like running your foot down someone's leg to smash their ankle. It's pretty nasty. And at the same time, we come through with a block and a back fist to like something that's here. Then we take one step forward, and nope, that's wrong. It's slightly wrong. There we go. We come with a cover, and we end up with a straight punch, which is really weird for Tai Chi, but it works in this particular case. Righto. Seems like a good area to, I mean, iliacus. Yeah, my other 17-year experience in martial arts was in Tang Sudo, which is a Korean version, one of the Korean arts that is karate based, related to Japanese karate as well as Korean Mudokwan, which, like, Mudokwan kind of split into two, and one was Tang Sudo and the other was Taekwondo. So, more or less. Yeah. Eskrimo is really like a people's art. So when they had originally created it, it was because like the local crime families were trying to extort people for their food money, and they were just like, yeah, no, we're not playing this game. And a bunch of people were like, I mean, look, these guys are really good with little stiletto knives and good with stabby, especially right here under the sternum. And so they were like, we're not playing this game. We're going to... Most of us are carrying machetes to work anyway. Let's use those. So, you know what? Screw it. It's fun. We'll do single. So basically, you typically have, got to get down to less than an inch toward the end here. This is pointing directly toward your target. So like, you want the butt end effectively here facing the camera so you can't see where the back end of this thing is. And that way, when it comes at you, a little more square, when it comes at you, it's kind of like whippy and a surprise, and you didn't quite see that one coming. The other thing is that like there are multiple moves for it. So our 1s and 2s are just straight shots like this. Our number 3 combination is a straight shot followed by an overhead, followed by a straight shot. So oftentimes the overhead strike kind of surprises somebody. We do this with like full faceplate and a steel faceplate and heavy padding. So like if you were to fight with this is a 250 gram like regular bamboo, I think. Might be rattan, but it might be bamboo. Like this won't hurt. Not much anyway. Our number 4 does a straight strike and then drops to open stance. So here, like, you're wide open, but your hand is in front to deflect, and then now you've got the weapon like way on this side. This is also hard to see coming because now it's like, it's not on your sword arm side, it's on your deflection side. So like, if I wanted to, right, I'm going to do a standard strike, which comes out like this. It's coming out, and then it stops against my hand, which causes the end to whip around even faster. And then if I combo that with a strike downward, it's going to cause, or if I just redirect my wrist, it's going to go back up and over into your normal stance. And then since we're in closed stance here, we can just do singles like that. We can do overhead here. You could do all sorts of stuff. So we end up doing things like that. Combine them all at once. Or from here, you can go straight down like that over the top of the shoulder. You can also literally use your shoulder as brace. So like the back end, the not sharp side of the machete can go right against your back, and you just roll it right off. We also have a combination that we do called Sticks to Heaven. Now, I don't have my second one. It's over there. I can go get it. But normally it's a V shape followed by a deflection underneath, and then they swap, and then they come back down here, and then we go with a V shape here, like that. One of the things that we can do is, instead of just doing a regular V shape and then coming in with a block and back, is we could do this V shape and then come around the head and strike again. So it gets really wild. We played a bit with the four of us, the three students and our instructor, all with, again, steel faceplate and heavy padding. Our gloves and helmets have shoulder pads as well, so we managed to not hurt each other. I'm wondering if that was pure luck. But it was good times. Grassroots socioeconomic self-defense development. I know, right? I mean, like these days, right? That's almost every martial arts group that's out there now, is like, we're going to teach you self-defense because you should know self-defense. Never mind the greater social implication of these people know how to defend themselves. What? It couldn't possibly be relevant today. With the weight of the training weapons, yeah. So those are 250s, or sorry, those are 125s. Those are 1/8 of a kilogram. I have ones that are 20. Those are 26 inch. The 500s are also 26 inch. I have 250s, which are polycarbonate, and 28 inches. And I would get those things whipping around, and the tips, they're only 2 inches longer. But like the moment of inertia is smaller compared to the other. I guess it's larger, but you're putting in the same amount of force as the 125s. You can get those whipping around real fast. And I ended up breaking at least 6 of the rattan 125s before I was like, you know what, maybe I should stop. And the instructor's like, yeah, thanks. But that's the thing about like rattan, is that it doesn't splinter and break, and it doesn't like shatter all over the place. Bamboo tends to kind of peel a bit, so like in bunches. So you've got like, huge splits that start coming off. That's not great if you're like whipping it around. It can start, pieces can go flying off. Rattan, on the other hand, delaminates. And so it starts coming undone from the point of impact. It starts looking like string, like hemp rope, basically. So we were smacking these things together, doing our sticks to heaven, combinations and stuff like that. And the instructor was just like, okay, we need to retire that stick. And he looks at mine and he's like, okay, so is this yours? Is that the problem? I'm like, yeah, probably. It's like the only common factor, not the only common factor, but the common factor where I noticed that every single time it started damaging another stick in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was, I actually had a neighbor from, I think, El Salvador, and like my uncle and aunt went there, during the bad times in the 90s. And like one of my other neighbors came over. She was renting from one of our friends, but she came over and she's like, he's like sitting out here sharpening a machete. I'm like, yeah. She's like, isn't that like weird and dangerous? I'm like, no, not really. And given that that was 2017, after Trump took office the first time, I was like, hey, if anybody's going to knock on his door, I don't think they're going to come in. Oh, and then there was the Spanish moved in to colonize, and the crime families typically were like, yeah, sure, we'll help you, and then doing all sorts of illegal stuff in the background, but as long as they could pay off the Spanish, like nobody would care. They've been doing it for centuries, right? So of course they know how to navigate new people coming in to rule them. But the Spanish were like, yeah, these people are using machetes for a martial art. I don't think that's going to be. I'm real hesitant to allow this to happen. And then the governor was like, yeah, you can't do this anymore. And they were like, sure. Everybody grab sticks. So that's where the um, uh, like mainstream usage of the Arnis or Kali sticks are used in Eskrima. And most of it uses the Spanish words for everything. Mm-hmm. It was fun. I created a monk character in D&D like 10 years ago or something. I was like, hell yeah. Is me. Sort of. Not really. In another letter to his friend dated 17th of March 1648, Mersenne discusses questions relating to the optimal shape of the lute. Should it be parabolic or hyperbolic? He mentions a lute or 15-row theorbo where the quarter tones are marked. 6th of April 1648, Constantine Huygens announces to Mersenne that an English lord had brought him from France a fine old grand lute from Bologna, the best he has ever touched. Asks him in return what form of lute he thought would produce the most beautiful resonance and why. He tells him regarding this question, I know of something by experience which rarely deceives me, but my Archimedes will be in charge of reasoning on my theory. Archimedes was the nickname Huygens used for Christian. My Archimedes, yeah. Constantine Huygens was a true art lover. The editions of his editors of his son Christian's Oeuvre Complète report that Constantine was one of the first, perhaps the first, to understand Rembrandt's genius. Yep. He was responsible for commissioning paintings for the House of Orange and bought several Rembrandts for them. We now turn more specifically to the two offspring, Galileo Galilei and Christian Huygens. Both raised in environments conducive to their intellectual development, as children they both had the opportunity to meet musicians and other artists who passed by the family home. Vincenzo Galilei wanted his son to become a physician. Well, nothing changes, does it? While Constantine Huygens thought his son would follow in his footsteps into a career of diplomacy. Neither son followed the father's path. Galileo became a professor of mathematics, then mechanics and astronomy, while Christian lived mainly on his father's annuities. Oh no. Then on those of Louis XIV, who took him under his protection, and later on from some of his inventions' income. Okay. Principally watches and clocks, for which he had obtained exclusive exploitation privileges from the King of France. Royal patent. Nice. Good if you can get it. In their approach to science, Christian Huygens and Galileo Galilei shared a geometrical bent when it came to tackling mathematical and physical problems in the pure tradition. Sorry, I just realized that was off. Actually, hang on a second. Where is... Hang on. Let's switch to Excalidraw and get our bearings here correct. That's probably good enough. Okay, lock that. Try again. Yeah, much better. And a little more zoomed in. Right. Geometrical bent when it came to tackling mathematical and physical problems in the pure tradition of the ancient Greeks, and particularly Archimedes. This is also very common, just generally speaking, in that time period. People were still getting used to the idea of Descartes' coordinate systems, and even, before Descartes. This is before Descartes' systems in many cases. So that was kind of like breaking math. It was another good podcast, by the way. This was like, mathematical research at the time was looking at the Cartesian coordinate system and trying to figure out, does the mathematics work when we put it on the Cartesian plane, as well as just working regularly as well. So analytic geometry, I think, is what we had it listed as up there. This applies to fields such as optics, hydrostatics, and more generally the science of equilibrium of bodies, to problems of areas and volumes, and many others. The two men never met. When Galileo died in 1642, exiled in his villa in Arcetri, Huygens was just 13 years old, so yeah, they weren't really contemporaries. From a certain point onwards, Mersenne, who had already sustained correspondence with Constantine Huygens, began, at the latter's request, to write his son. Indeed, a letter to Mersenne, dated 23rd of December 1646, states, "From now on, I will only serve as an address to the literary trade among you two." His son, whom he called My Little Mathematician, was 17 at the time. A few days later, dated 14 January 1647, Huygens writes to Mersenne, "You have too high an opinion of my Archimedes, but I know that he will never deny that the one you must have of him." The opinion you must have of him. Okay. The letters are a reply to one of Mersenne, dated 3rd of January 1647, in which the latter comments on Christian's ideas on falling bodies, in which he tells his friend that he believes that if his son continues to work in the way he started, he will one day pass Archimedes. Not bad. The problem of falling bodies was of particular interest to Galileo Galilei, and we shall comment on this below. Christian Huygens was primarily a mathematician. He was a founding member of the Académie Royale des Sciences, and probably the most notable Parisian mathematician of his time. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, during a stay he made in Paris from 1672 to 1676, he was only 26 years old. 26 to 30, was his private pupil. The two men always maintained a rich epistolary relationship. In their correspondence, Leibniz often presented his mathematical works to Huygens, asking his opinion. In the following sections, I shall discuss various scientific topics of interest to both Galilei and Huygens families. Chronological reasons, I will consider questions concerning vibrating strings, falling bodies, the pendulum, curves, and astronomy in that order. These are all questions in which Huygens was interested from his youth. I will then turn to the problem of musical temperament, a question which was dear to the two Galilei and to Huygens, and on which Christian Huygens did substantial work later on in his life. I begin with the question of string vibration. For Galileo Galilei, this was a contribution of the work started by his father. For Christian Huygens, the work was also a tribute to his own father, whose favorite activity was music. Huygens was well aware of Galilei's work on the theory of sound, and he mentions it in his piece Le Son. Part 2 of this piece is titled Rapport des longueurs des cordes constantes suivant Pythagore et rapport des nombres de leurs vibrations suivant Galilei et d'autres savants. 33. Not translated. Reports of the lengths of constant lengths of chords following Pythagoras, and reports of numbers and their vibrations following Galileo and other geniuses. Mersenne, in a letter to Christian Huygens, dated 16 November 1646, addresses a related question. "I forgot to ask your father if he can play the lute. If so, I beg you to see if you would like to solve this beautiful problem. Why the string AB, taken at your wish, for example chanterelle, attached firmly at A and making some sound, must be stretched at B 4 times as much as before to reach the next octave, whereas it only needs to be shortened by half C at C to bring it up the octave. I understand that your foundation of mathematics teaches that to make a movement twice as fast, perhaps a quadruple force is required. You will make the beginning of the proof, which will be invaluable to me from your hand." One may recall here that Mersenne, in his Harmonie Universelle, published 10 years earlier, gave a formula in which, in modern terms, says that whereas the frequency of a sound produced by a vibrating string is inversely proportional to its length, the same frequency is proportional to the square root of the string tension. In fact, in his letter to Huygens, Mersenne seeks to understand the reason for the need of taking the square root of the tension. This question is also linked to the discovery made by Vincenzo Galilei, which we've already mentioned, namely that in order to make a string sound at the upper octave, the tension of the string must be divided by a factor of 1/4 and not 1/2. This kind of problem concerning musical intervals continued to occupy Huygens for the rest of his life. Huygens replied to Mersenne a few days later. Concerning the musical problem which you suggest to me, amplius deliberandum senseo, having found it in your book Physicomat, I have often speculated on it, but the solution is very difficult as far as I can see, and it is necessarily so because otherwise it would not have been ignored by so many brave minds today. Ego amplius deliberandum is a famous sentence by Terence, 2nd century BCE, which was also used by others after him, meaning that the question is unclear and needs more thought, information, or deliberation. It is important to recall here that Mersenne performed a great number of experiments in which he describes harmonicorum libri in quibus agitur de sonorum natura causis et effectibus. Among his propositions, let me mention the one saying that the tone produced by a vibrating string does not depend on the amplitude of the vibration. This is proposition 29. We may find this natural, but it is not priori obvious. In his letters to Christian Huygens, Mersenne asks questions and at the same time shares his thoughts on the problem that he was addressing. In his letter dated 8th of January 1647, he tackles once again the question of influence and the string tension on musical instruments and intervals produced. He introduces it as follows. Your father is very fond of music, and I hope you will take pleasure, for his sake, in involving a harmonic difficulty that you yourself will try out on your lute. He then submits to him the same question we mentioned before. The dependence of tone on tension. In greater detail, explaining how the tension of a string can be doubled by using weights. In the same letter, Mersenne writes, regarding what I have told you about the quadruple tension of the harmonic string to bring it up to the octave, I remember that I dealt with this in the ballistics, proposition 36, the reading of which will perhaps bring true demonstration to your mind. Several years later, in 1673, Christian Huygens discovered a profound relationship between the problem of vibrating string and that of the pendulum, on which he was working extensively. Thanks to this relationship, he was able to establish the mathematical laws that are behind Mersenne's formula on the frequency of a vibrating string. We offer the interested reader to Huygens' article, Découverte de la théorie générale de l'isocronisme des vibrations. Another problem that Christian Huygens tackled was that which had attracted Galileo's interest before him is that of falling bodies. The problem concerns a search for the law of acceleration of these bodies, but also, and more fundamentally, it is about understanding why objects we drop start to fall. I sincerely was about to read Why We Drop Objects, which, let's be honest, also a good question. Why objects we drop start to fall. Again, this is not an obvious fact. It will be addressed in the next section. All right. We start by recalling a few facts which should help understanding the problem of falling bodies. During the Renaissance, measurements were made on objects dropped from the top of a tower, and it was noticed, a fact that was not obvious a priori, that heavy or very heavy objects dropped simultaneously reach the ground at almost the same time. It was also known that the speed of a falling body is not constant but undergoes an acceleration, and it was thought that this acceleration takes place according to the sequence of natural numbers. a sentence which meant that if we divide the duration of the fall of a body into equal periods of time, and if during the first lapse of time the body travels 1 unit of length, it travels 2 units in the second lapse of time, 3 in the third, and so on. In other words, it was thought that velocity was proportional to the time covered, or equivalently, and using again modern language, that the acceleration of free-falling bodies is constant. Laws of falling bodies are already contained in Aristotelian physics. Galileo got the idea of experimenting on falling bodies using inclined planes on which he dropped balls, postulating that the law governing falling bodies should be the same for an object falling on a vertical plane as on an inclined plane. The advantage of working on an inclined plane is that the objects fall more slowly, and thus lends itself better to measurement. In this context, it's important to recall that Galileo did not have a clock with which he could measure time. To study falling bodies, he was led to devise ingenious devices, such as a water clock. That is, he measured the elapsed time by judging the weight of the water flowing from a thin pipe to the bottom of a large water jug. Such experiments are described in the Discorsi e Dimostrazioni Matematiche intorno a due nuove scienze. We now turn to Christian Huygens, who was interested in the same question from an early age. Dated 3 September 1646, he was 17, he wrote to his brother, also called Constantine. Okay, Constantine II. AB is an altitude from which a weight C is dropped. I demonstrate that in the first interval of time of its fall, it passes a spacing, like here, CD. In the second interval of time equal to the first, 3 such spacings, and comes as far as E. In the third time, 5 spacings, and in the fourth, 7. And we'll continue to make greater progress each time, always adding to the last spacing twice the first one. In addition to this, I have demonstrated that if it is thrown in any direction, it describes a parabola. Of all this and an infinite number of things that depend on it, I never knew the demonstration until I invented it myself. Huygens' solution was the same as Galileo Galilei's. Mersenne knew that this problem was difficult. In a letter dated 13 October 1646, he wrote to Christian Huygens about the problem, declaring in particular, "As I greatly honor your father, and as I believe it will please him in talking with you about your propositions, of which you say you have the demonstration, I will only tell you about the last one, of which I do not believe you have a demonstration if I do not see it." He then developed his ideas about the falling bodies without reaching any definite conclusion. Like, come on, man. At the same time, he talks to his young correspondent about ballistics, parabolic trajectory of objects. This is a subject to which Galileo had made significant contributions. Indeed, Galileo was not only interested in the vertical fall of bodies, but also in the trajectory of those with an initial non-vertical impetus. He discovered that this trajectory, unless the impetus is directed vertically, is always parabolic. And it's still parabolic, it's just two-dimensional, or one-dimensional, I guess. So vertically, it will still follow a parabolic path, but in time rather than in 2 dimensions of space. Right, so the trajectory is always parabolic. A result that formed the basis of what was to become theoretical ballistics, a topic which was already of interest to Constantine Huygens, the father, before his son, Christian, took up the subject in turn. In the same letter, Mersenne writes to Christian Huygens that for the trajectory to remain parabolic, the impetus imparted to the projectile must never cease, but qualities that are easily imparted, such as impetus, are just as easily and quickly lost. Violentum non durabile. To conclude on the subject, he says, nevertheless, if notwithstanding this consideration you believe that your demonstration is still valid, I will be pleased if you communicate it to me. And then if you if you have got it right, I will tell you to show this violent force, so that you can then determine by locus by which your effect must strike with more violence. I would add that the principles Galileo has taken from everything he has said about motion are hardly firm, and although in small heights the proportions follow fairly closely, in large they are almost always lacking. That's really not surprising, just because the precision of measurement was not really a thing for them. Okay. We're going to head out, kind of fading, so get out while the getting's good. We're going to go over and see somebody. Let's go see Curly, because she's funny. Curly is a well, she's playing Resident Evil Village tonight, waiting for RE9 to come out, and she also has what was it? She does dance, and also I can't remember. She's really good at math, and I don't remember if that was because she was trained in math ed, or if she was just like, chemistry or something like that, and just really liked math. But either way. Is she a mathematician? Oh, I forget. Anyway, we're going to head out and see Curly. Hope you all have a good night. Thank you so much for coming on in. Harold Spark, good to meet you. Nice to meet everybody who came in from the raid. And blarg. From Dr. WD40. And just want to say, have a great night. We're back tomorrow with Blueprints, which is our 5th night of stream. I've already got a bunch of pages of notes. It's great. And then we're also going to be back on Wednesday for Cracking the GRE. And then Friday, hang on, let's make sure I got my calendar correct. I believe we're still here Friday. Oh yeah, we're good. On Friday, we're going to be doing I don't particularly have a raid message, but feel free to throw a bunch of emotes out there. Arg. We're probably either going to play Against the Storm, or we're going to continue our scientific scientific missions in Elite Dangerous. So, hope to see you all later. My name's Obi-Wan Pez. This is Ensign Plix Pachinko. Have a good night.